So we're going to talk about this story today. And in our crazy, crazy world that we live in today, 2024 has no shortages of crazy stories. And I think no matter which side of the aisle you're on, when you're talking about a woman being burned alive in New York City on a subway while she's asleep, you would have to admit that we're in some crazy times. And that's why this story has also the headline of Why No One Trusts the Media Anymore. And so if we go to X, you will find that the New York Daily News has decided that this woman has died after she caught fire in a Brooklyn subway car. And the NYPD suspects homicide. Now, that is some headline. And this is how disingenuous the media has become, is the idea that she somehow spontaneously caught fire on a subway car. Nobody spontaneously catches fire on a subway car. These are not things that happen. And this is why the trust in the media has declined to the point it has. And you can certainly say what you want about X, but readers are at least able to provide context now. And so the context that was added was the woman did not quote unquote catch fire. It was a deliberate and intentional act caught on surveillance cameras. The NYPD has accused a suspect of intentionally setting fire to this woman while she was sleeping. And this is how the media has lost their credibility, as they have framed things in ways that no sane person would ever view as something that makes sense. Now, sure, there's been climate activists that have self immolated, and that's a bit of a different story. But not a lot of people that I know have ever fallen asleep anywhere and suddenly burst into flame. That's not a thing that happens. So if we flip over to some of the stories that the media has reported on this, we'll have a look and we'll say, this man was charged in a woman's burning death on a New York subway, but he was deported from the US in 2018. And we can go down and we can see some of the footage of this. And you can see this shirt. Pay attention to that shirt. We'll go back a little bit. Look at that shirt. Now, let's bring up this shirt. Fascinating. Very interesting. Seems like the same person. Now, this person was deported in on entered the country and through Arizona June 1st, 2018, was removed from the US, returned to Guatemala days later. You can see that down here. And on June 7th, 2018, that's when he was returned to Guatemala. And now they don't know how this person has returned to the US, but now has set fire to a human being on the New York subway. And if we go to same images, we just had a look at this. Security cameras caught most of it. Charged with first and second degree murder as well as arson. And the police commissioner in New York, and New York has, boy, does it have its share of problems, is one of the most depraved crimes one person could possibly commit against another human being. So if we understand these things and we can say these things, how can we not hold people accountable? And this is ultimately the problem we're having in society right now, is there's so much discussion and dialogue around everybody else around the crime, such as Daniel Penny and his situation, that there really doesn't seem to be much accountability from the people actually committing the crimes, and the courts don't hold them accountable. We're not preventing people from re-entering the country and then committing these crimes. And these are huge problems. The politicians' ultimate goal is to secure the rights and freedoms and safety of their citizens and not take all these external things and try to apply them to every situation. So now critics, as of the NY Post, and we're trying to have a bit of a balanced view from different, you know, media outlets on what this is, but the critics have now blasted the bystanders who stood by while this person burned this woman to death. And they're calling it the Daniel Penny effect. And Daniel Penny obviously got off from the charges, the manslaughter charges that were applied. But these are the things that happen is there is a process that is a punishment where you are charged as somebody who is forced to deal with a crime, and the original person committing the crime somehow becomes less relevant than the reaction to the crime. And you could take this into account during castle law if you want to discuss castle law. You know, as a homeowner, if somebody kicks your door down and you defend yourself, now you are put on trial. And it's the system is now ignoring the causation of the situation and then trying people and punishing them by process for their reaction to the crime. And you could make the argument that this is what's happening in the Daniel Penny situation. Daniel Penny did not get on the subway that day with the intent to hurt somebody else. I don't think that's a valid argument. I don't think anyone can make that argument. And I don't think if Jordan Neely had somehow not been on the subway today, that somehow Daniel Penny would have choked out somebody else because that's what he was looking to do. Those are not valid arguments. And this is the problem we've got with the way some of the courts are handling crimes these days is there is so much external pressure to hold everybody else accountable except the person who's actually committing the crime. And so we're going to go over to a story that happened in Canada years ago. And this individual was on a bus heading from, not too sure where this person got on the bus, but ended up cutting off the head of another 22-year-old individual who was on the bus beside him. Stabbed him repeatedly, cut off his head, held up the head in front of all the people who had fled the bus, and somehow this person was given an absolute discharge, was allowed to change their name, and they don't pose a significant threat to the public. This is the stuff that's been going on for years. And as regular citizens, we need to have a really strong position with our politicians on how unacceptable things like this are. It is absolutely unacceptable that people are not held accountable. And if we get into a larger discussion around the death penalty, and I've had multiple debates with many people on the death penalty, if we can find somebody, and I'll probably do a short video on the Christmas, the German Christmas market situation that just happened, where 60 to 80 people were injured and 2 people were killed. I believe it's 2 at this point. If you can get this person on video and you can arrest them at the scene, what is society's obligation to keep these people either on a life sentence or allow them to be released? And the thing that bothers me most is it ignores the actual victims. You've got this woman's family in New York that now will never see this person again. You have this individual and the person that he committed this crime against. That family for the last, what was it, 2008? So we're in 2024, call it 16 years, doesn't have this individual in their lives. And we need to start holding politicians accountable, the media accountable, and start realizing that these types of actions are not acceptable in our society, and we need to hold these people accountable for the actions they undertake and not a series of other situations that don't actually apply to the crime. If the person immigrated illegally, okay, doesn't matter. They still committed a crime. If the person immigrated legally and they did this, they still committed a crime. And this is the problem we've got. And this is where us as average citizens, we need to start really taking a stand, understand the stories, understand where our politicians are failing us, and do a better job of holding them accountable. And it's up to us because they clearly can't hold themselves accountable. And then average citizens are suffering the consequences when there's repeat criminals and repeat illegal immigration that ends up in the death of people. And time that people understood their responsibility within society to hold the courts and the politicians accountable for treating these people like nothing has gone wrong. So that's the crazy, crazy world we're in. Plenty more to come. And the only way we can change it is if we understand it, stand up to it.